interview, I'm joined by John Course, Andy Van, and Damien Platt of Vicious Recordings. And we have a full, long interview about the history of the label. We chat Tik Tok tips and loads more. Let's dive in. Hey, it's Grahame Farmer from Data Transmission, and today on YouTube, I'm joined by the gang from Vicious Recordings. They joined me on my Twitch stream recently, and I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays over on Twitch. The link's below from 1 p.m. till 5 p.m. Over on Twitch, we have live interviews, live A&R sessions, feedback sessions, competitions, play new music on a Friday. There's loads of fun and games, so come and join us on Twitch. Give us a follow on Twitch. Part of that Twitch stream, I was joined by the gang from Vicious Recording. Now, Vicious have been around for a long time, so I asked them about the history of the label. They also, as part of that conversation, they told me about running labels. There's loads of tips on running labels. It's a big, long interview this, so get strapped in, make some tea, have a watch and get involved. They also talked about TikTok tips, loads of tips for TikTok. If you're a TikToker and you want to know about TikTok, and you want to grow your TikTok, there's loads of tips for TikTok in there. I hope you enjoy this. Let's jump into it. Hey guys,
how you going, man?
How you doing? We're all in there, and we're all in the right name holder. Yes, we're all good. Hurrah! We're all in the right place.
It looks like we're who we're supposed to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I was suddenly worried. Thanks for joining me on my disco shed.
No problem.
I like the decorations. It's a little look. We're looking very bored compared to you. Our little rooms are very straightforward. I need to get a disco light from the next door studio.
So this is my disco shed in my garden. Basically, we built it as a streaming studio. Go on.
Andy has a room like that. He films all his TikTok videos in as well.
Yeah, we've got a what we call the bungalow, and it's all got disco lights and fairy lights and turntables and CDJs and all the same things. So because we do a whole bunch of Twitches, we do a whole bunch of TikToks, and that's our sort of den, very similar to yours.
Amazing! I want to see this. Is it on your? So it's on your TikTok. I want to go and see this afterwards.
Yeah, just go to Super Disco Club, and you'll see it.
Amazing. I want to see this. Okay, cool. Let's just say hi. So do you want to kind of introduce yourselves and kind of give the 4-on-1?
My name's obviously John Course, as you can see from the little tag. But started the label with Andy 29 years ago now. Vicious. We started in a little back shed. I've been a DJ for the whole time, massive dance music fan, and just been involved in club music forever, and still love it as much as I ever did.
Damien, do you want to go next?
Hey, I'm Damien. I'm the marketing manager at Vicious Recordings, and we also look after other sub-labels as well, such as Be Rich Records, Vicious Black, Eugenius, and Valiant Records as well, and I've been working with Vicious for the past 4 years.
Yep, and I'm Andy Van, and you can see that from the name tag there as well. I started the label with John 29 years ago when I was 4 years old. No, only joking there. I was maybe possibly a little older than that. I'm also the artist Madison Avenue, and more recently Super Disco Club. And I look after A&R for the label, and also a director with John. And similar thing as John, DJ as well, but DJing a very, very long time, well, all that time. And, a house music fan from, back in, the early days. I would have, both John and I have a monster record collection. So we sort of started super early in our lives as DJs, and that brought us through to connecting with the label and starting the label, and then we're here now.
Well, how did the label start?
We were both into music, obviously, and we were DJing. We both actually were turntablists as well as music fans early on, so we both went in the local Victorian DMC competition, which then had an Australian final, and obviously all around the world, the DMC championships, the final used to be in London at the maybe Hammersmith Hall or something like that. Anyway, so we were very into music, and we used to get a lot of English magazines to look at what songs were coming up, because obviously we try and order vinyl from overseas and go into our local record shops to get vinyl. And we started to see kind of DJs making music. I remember we saw a picture of Fatboy Slim with all this studio gear, and we were like, we should get some of that. I have no idea what it does, but let's get some because he's got some. And that's how me and Andy started the studio, basically. And we had a little studio set up for a couple of years, and then we were like trying to make some early house music and techno and stuff, and we were like, how are we going to put this out? Let's just do it ourselves. You know, the majors in Australia are very kind of out of touch with the emergence of early house music scene. They had no idea what the hell was going on. So we were just like, let's just do it ourselves. And Andy, you want to continue a little bit from there?
Yeah, for me it was actually Cold Cut, Beat This, and Simon Harris. I always remember that album. And at that time, John and I had the studio, and we were starting to hack around with, you know, our own sort of productions and you know, ideas. And we thought, you know, there's no outlet, as John said. Major labels weren't doing stuff, and we thought, let's start our own label, which is obviously how the label was born, Vicious Recordings. At the time, it was called Vicious Vinyl because that's what was around. There wasn't that was prior to CDs, so we started it at that time when really it was all just about vinyl. Fortunately for us, we were quite connected at the time as DJs, and so we knew a lot of you know, bookers and agents and promoters. And there was a not young, well, he would have been young then, a young DJ called Carl Cox that came to Australia, and we asked him to be our third or fourth release. I can't remember now the catalog number, but it was either the third or fourth release. Was Eternal by Carl Cox. Third release,
No
way. So Carl Cox's first ever foray onto vinyl was with Vicious.
Yeah, there was a Melbourne promoter and DJ who was touring Carl, and he was like, hey, while we're here, we should try and make a record together. So Mark James was his name, from Future Entertainment at the time, a massive touring brand that developed. But at the time, they were just, you know, doing little club shows and bringing out English DJs. They toured Carl, brought him down to our little studio, and we whacked out a banging techno track called Eternal by Eternal.
No way. Well, so I'm guessing the landscape back then was not housey at all, and just, I guess, rock from an Australian point of view, I guess.
Yeah, very rock. I mean, you know, the Australian music scene, super rock dominated. Really, it wasn't until things, I mean, there was obviously dance music that broke through over the years, and I think the ARIA Awards started having, which are the equivalent to your Brit Awards in the UK or the Grammys in the US. The ARIA Awards started developing a dance ARIA maybe in kind of, I guess, the start of the 90s. I mean, it was just a rock-dominated scene. Radio was rock and pop. And, you know, one of the first probably dance music things to really break through that was Australian was Madison Avenue, where it had massive crossover success. I mean, we speak to DJs now and they still remember that, you know, that was a record that, wow, I heard that and that got me into dance music. So very different scene to how it is now. It's very open to all sorts of music now. And it's not that it wasn't then, but obviously, you know, it was just the supply and demand. It's such a long way away from the other side of the world. Music, you know, in the UK, a record can grow out of London to an hour out of London, and then an hour out of London, you end up 5 or 6 hours away and you're in the Midlands, and then another 5 hours you're in Scotland, and then it can spread across Europe in a similar way. In Australia, it's 8 hours between the major cities, and even once you're in the major cities, we're a flight from anywhere else around the world. So, you know, the music scene, even though we were hungry for dance music, the people who were into it was a small scene, and each city had its own scenes, you know. And it was all relied on, at the time, imported music, and we were buying a lot of European, a lot of English dance music. You know, companies like, I think back then Prime Distribution, who are still around now, they were around, but there was a bunch of, you know, big distributors, and there was probably, 4 vinyl record shops that were really key, important shops in Melbourne, would you say, Andy?
Yeah, that's right. Interesting point, though. One thing that was amazing about being a DJ then that completely no DJ in the world would understand now was if you had a piece of vinyl that no one had, you could be the only DJ with that piece of vinyl in Melbourne or possibly Australia. And I had people that would come drive an hour just to go to my gig to hear that song because they had no other way to hear that song. And it was, I always remember I had certain tracks and I had certain remixes that no other DJ had. Maybe John had it, but there was virtually no one else. So you were the place that people would go to hear specific music. And it was a really great time for breaking music, obviously not to the level of now because, you put a track on SoundCloud or something and everyone can hear it in minutes. But it was just a really interesting time that I thought was a fantastic time as well to be a DJ.
Yeah, I was going to say, Andy, when you were pressing those vinyl back then, were you just pressing for like the Melbourne area, or would they go further?
No, the other way around. Sorry, it was the total opposite. We pressed it in the UK at an EMI pressing plant and a couple of other pressing plants and sold them in the UK and just brought, I don't know, maybe 20% back to Australia because it was so expensive to get it back here. And sometimes we would bring it back to Australia and we would sell it and we would actually be losing money to sell it in Australia because it was so expensive to make it and get it back here. So it was better for us to make it in the UK and sell it in the UK. And that's hence, how we broke things, which was via the UK. And we always wanted to be known as a world label as opposed to an Australian label. That was really important to us.
That's mental. Like I was thinking, like I probably did it in Melbourne. You stay in Melbourne, and like you're saying, that you're the only people in Melbourne that has it. But that's mad. Like only UK and only a few copies over there.
Yes.
No, it was the complete opposite. We would we used to. I mean, there was various variations over the years, but once we actually refined the vinyl process, we had a guy that used to help us with the label out of London, and we would get we'd get a test pressing. He would go into Abbey Road. He'd sit into the mastering session. Then instead of sending the test pressings all the way back to Australia, we'd send him to his house in London. He would listen to the test pressings. He'd approve the test pressing so that straight away you're saving another 2 weeks in shipping and time. And then when the records eventually come out, we would do, let's say we had 1,000 of a piece of vinyl pressed. We would send that 1,000 to our distributor in London, like any English record label would. And then that distributor would send 50 to our UK guy so he could give them to some DJs in London and in England, mail them out to a few people. And we would have maybe out of those 1,000, 100 sent to Australia that we would give to some DJs and we would sell to some record shops in Australia. And the other 800 would sell out of a distributor in London to shops all around the world. And some of our earliest records, we had deals, we signed that our third release was Eternal by Eternal, which was the Carl Cox project. That was on Underground Level Recordings in the UK, which was a label that Carl was dealing with. They eventually went bust, actually. So it was on Underground Level Recordings as a piece of vinyl, and then it was also on Vicious as a piece of vinyl. And we had an early compilation that we did with Moby's label in the US, which was called, was it Vicious? It was called Vicious Techno, I think, which was kind of like this just does what it says on the tin. I mean, it's quite soft.
That's a great name.
Yeah. I mean, quite soft techno compared to, I guess, some of the tougher stuff of today, but it was really kind of early purist kind of stripped back, house music sound. So yeah, and that was probably come out in 1994 that we had that compilation out in the US, and it was on a US label, but it was all Australian developed underground dance music. So it was kind of like, as Andy said, we always had this global vision that, dance music was a worldwide thing and we were part of it, techno and house and raves and whatever. And while our scene was small, the mentality of us as DJs, we were buying music from all over the world, whether it be, you know, the Italo house movement or techno from Detroit or whatever, and all of those influences flowed into the Australian market, flowed into us, flowed into our sets, and it was a very eclectic kind of night you could have of music in 88, 89, 90. You could hear, you know, soul to soul. In an Australian kind of dance club, you could hear soul to soul, you could hear Eric B and Rakim, you know, a cold cut remix, you could hear S Express, you could hear Yaz, you could hear, you know, Inner City, you could hear Strings of Life. But it was all kind of an alternative to whatever else was going on music-wise here. So it was a super healthy and very invigorated scene, but kind of small compared to what the UK, you know, what we saw out of the UK. But it was very cool and very fun to be part of. You know, it was exciting.
If you're I'm just like, the first thought was like those release schedules must have been like so long and so complex back then, because if you're sending stuff and it's got to get approved and it's gone back and there's weeks of, literally, like say, weeks in between. That must have been crazy. Like
it was, and lucky we had a fax machine, because that helped us communicate with the world. So I'm not kidding you. We would, you know, we'd come in the next morning and look at all the faxes that we got to see what communication we had with the world overnight. And we had the Vicious office at the start. I'm not kidding you. Was a garage in size. So it was, I don't know, maybe 10 meters long by 4 meters wide. And that was the studio and the Vicious office in one. So, and we had 3 staff working and 2 computers. So one person had to stand while the other 2 people were using a computer and sort of just wander around. It was really, really minimal. Awesome time, like awesome memories.
Just to jump in to give you an example of a timeline, I mean, it was a little bit after the early days. I mean, the first vinyl we put out was 1992, but even in 2000 when we did Madison Avenue, the white label promos were the first 10 test pressings we got in the second or third week of January. We then approved those test pressings, and then we gave them out to a few people, and then obviously the actual pressing come back. I mean, that record come out in Australia and charted about 8 months later. So from the start of the life of a song and then it didn't come out in the UK until November, then it was deleted and re-released in May the next year. So its kind of lifespan as a piece of music was kind of like a year and a half, from absolute kind of test pressing moment through to commercial CD single sales. Yeah, I mean, you could have a piece of vinyl if you got, maybe there was like 200 pressed of the first issue of a track, and there might be, you know, 50 go to London stores and 20 go to stores up north, and 10 come into Rhythm and Soul in Melbourne or DMC Records in Melbourne. And if you got one of those 10 and it was a good record, and obviously lots of records started out like that, the other DJs in town might not have been able to get it until the second or third reissue of the pressing, because necessarily the labels, it was so expensive to press vinyl that they wouldn't necessarily go all out and press 5,000 in one go, because if you're left with 4,500, you've lost a lot of money because it was so expensive. So the life cycle and how music lived and developed through clubs was completely different to now. And it's got its advantages, because obviously back then it meant that for a record to really break through and establish itself, it had to be super strong, and it was a lot more expensive and a lot harder to release music. So that kind of was like a bit of and it had to go through a lot of people's ears. But now you can also be in the middle of anywhere. You can be in the middle of Australia. You can be in the middle of Africa. And if you've got an internet connection, you can go and listen to, you know, Solomon live in Ibiza. You know, like, so you can find music that you love when previously you could only find what was in the record shop that you could get to.
It's crazy. It's so sparse. Like here, I know there's a lot less. There's a lot less versions of records, but and again, you had to have you had to be those certain records, but not as sparse as that. Like I know that, like say here, there may be 1,000 copies, and there's only 1,000 people that maybe have it, but that's still like compared to 10, that's mental.
It was a crazy time, but it also meant that there was far less competition in the market because, I remember, sending out pieces of vinyl, and, I had techno DJ. There was a DJ named Chris Fortier from the States, and he would communicate with us because he had heard what we were doing in Australia. So it was like there was, maybe a couple of thousand people in the world making dance music, and that was it. Do you know what I mean? And obviously now there's hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people making music. Yes. So it's everything is literally watered down to, a millionth degree, and that's good and bad. Back in our time, hopefully now is our time as well. But back in those days it was just a much different and much more expensive way to do things. And it was exciting because the one thing that I would say, like vinyl is a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a physical thing. And it felt like you were actually making something. It's kind of like, a builder builds a house. Imagine if the world now was, you didn't build a house, you built a digital house, and you didn't, it was all made with computers, and maybe that will happen one day where just a machine will make it and you don't actually pick up a hammer. But music was like that. Do you know what I mean? You would make music. You would literally go to a studio, and I remember going to Abbey Road and sitting there and seeing the vinyl the test pressing of the vinyl getting cut, and then seeing it in stores. Was it H&M? Was it the H&M stores that used to sell it?
HMV, I remember.
HMV, that's it. Yes.
Things like "Gotta Have Hope."
Yes.
Our records on shelves in London when we visited there, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and then you would listen and you would hear Pete Tong play it that night on radio, and the buzz was beyond belief because it was just this, I don't know, this pathway, and it was only certain people in that group at the time, and it was a very exciting time for music to develop, and I think that's also why DJs are so connected to it, because DJs are so passionate about music. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's kind of the same thing. You can be a producer and that's cool, but a DJ lives and breathes music, as I'm sure you would understand. And so to have that music and to sell it and to make it and to hear it and to be part of that process, it's kind of like a complete thing. And that was a super exciting time, and I'll never ever forget it. And I'm so grateful that we were part of that early stages of developing it. Not that we were at the start, pioneers. I mean, you can't take that away from, the guys in Detroit and America and, Kraftwerk and all of that. I'm not trying to put ourselves in that league, but I am proud that we were part of something that was developing and building. And to a later degree, obviously, the label, or for the people that are not aware, we signed lots of artists, Dirty South, who had collabs with Axwell. We signed, of course, Avicii's first 8 releases. So we're a small label in Australia, but, with big aspirations, and I've always had that,
And then obviously you had the big behemoth track. Where did that kind of come in? Like, so you're saying, was that early 2000s?
Yeah, 1999 we made it and released it, and then in 2000 it got re-released. Basically, it got released first, as in, for people that aren't sure what we're talking about, it's "Don't Call Me Baby," which I produced. Yep. It basically got released and did well in the UK, but there was a remix by Drones, which was Eric Murillo, Jose Nunez, and his third guy's name escapes me. It'll come to me. Harry Romero.
Harry Romero.
Yeah, who's now Harry Romero. Sorry. That remix was hammered and everyone loved it because it was a super cool club mix. And to some extent, that took the focus away a little bit from the original mix. which was a bit of a shame because there was obviously a certain appeal with that original mix, which everyone knows now. So what happened was it basically got released and didn't do that well. I think it got into top 40 or something. I actually can't remember the number that it got to, but number 35 or something like that in the UK charts. And that was it. It was over. And then, again, because of HMV...
Just to jump in for a second, it actually got deleted.
Yeah.
Because back then the charts were physical. You could, if you put a record out and you expected it to go really well and for some reason it didn't go as well, you could delete it straight away and it would be available for like 2 weeks and then it would be not available. And that's what happened. They were like, we think this record, we might have got the timing wrong. We think it can be stronger. We're going to delete it and we're going to rethink it. And Andy, keep going from there.
Yeah. And then... because we put the acapella on the original vinyl, which I've always been a fan of, I love putting acapellas or buying acapellas as a DJ. So we put the acapella on, and some guys basically did a bootleg, and they were the Disco Babes from Outer Space, they were called, and they did a bootleg of Don't Call Me Baby, and that was flying off the shelves in HMV, hence the HMV connection again, which was fantastic, and that created all this buzz again around the track. So then that pushed Virgin in the UK to basically re-look at the track, and they said, oh, well, we'll re-release it, but this time have the focus on the original mix, which was great because both myself and John obviously believed in that because that was the version that we felt was the strongest version and was, basically track one on our CD and track one on the vinyl. So we believed in that original disco mix, and that got re-released, and it got so much buzz and so much excitement. It debuted at number one in the UK, which was phenomenally amazing. And, for an artist that had, apart from that, release a few months before, I'd never had a song released commercially as Madison Avenue or as anything like of that nature on a major label. So to debut at number one was extraordinary situation to happen. And I'll give you one other little amazing bit of information that was super fantastic. When we released Don't Call Me Baby a few months before in the story that I've been telling you in the UK, we released it in Australia and it got to number 2 in Australia. So that was fantastic on the pop charts, that is. So when, whatever it was, 5 months in between, Don't Call Me Baby was coming out again in the UK, hence the story I just told you. But in Australia, we were releasing the second single, Who the Hell Are You? And that came out the week after Don't Call Me Baby was number one in the UK. So we had newspapers front page of, the equivalent of The Sun or the biggest newspapers in the UK. Think of those in Australian terms. They were writing about a number one track in Australia. And then by coincidence or fortuitous timing, I can't remember how it worked out, but Who the Hell Are You was coming out that week. So that debuted at number one in Australia that week. So we had number one in the UK one week and then number one in Australia the following week. It was the most amazing timing and a crazy situation, with hundreds of interviews and, countries all around the world wanting us to go there and tour and DJ. And it was phenomenal timing.
We always started out with a global mentality because the music that we played come from all around the world, like in 88 and 89, we're getting Chicago house and techno records. We're getting English dance music records. We're getting Italian dance music records. We're getting Dutch dance music records. So we just thought of ourselves as making that kind of music. And obviously those early records, as I said, Eternal was our third release. It was released via Carl Cox on Underground Level Recordings in London. A track called God Intended was signed to the US. A track called Mind Odyssey by Eternal was signed to Warp Records out of Sheffield in the UK, which is an amazing label and still running now. We signed records to Pulse 8 in the UK. Then we had a record called Gotta Have Hope, which was by Blackout, and the Dylans and Dickens remix, which was an amazing remix. But Blackout was myself, Andy, and two other guys, who one of them is actually Sergeant Slick, who we still release his music now. And we signed it to a UK label that at the time was quite hot. and that the guys that they had in-house were called Dillons and Dickens, and they did this amazing remix that was it was our second record we ever had chart commercially in a country outside of Australia, and that was a song called Gotta Have Hope by Blackout. And the first to ever chart commercially was a song called Dreams of Heaven by Ground Level, which was signed to Pulse 8 Recordings, I think, in the UK. And it charted at 45 or something in the UK, and it was our first ever record. And I remember on mine and Andy's first ever trip to London, we went to a warehouse party in King's Cross under the arches, and we were standing waiting to get a drink or waiting in the toilet queue or something, and Dreams of Heaven come on, and we were like, wow, this is a record from Melbourne, this is on our label, and we're standing in a London warehouse and it's getting played. It was like, so there were moments like that along the way. Of course, you would never be thinking, hey, we're going to be in our studio in Frankston and my mate Andy's going to write a global #1, because that would be a pretty arrogant thing to think when you're two kids from the suburbs in outer Melbourne. But I think the expectations did rise of what you could do as a DJ, as a producer, as a label. There was a curve there, but obviously the curve was like going like this, and then Madison Avenue went, blew the roof off the curve in a major way. And, the album that Andy and Shane made was a pretty special kind of thing, and it certainly changed the landscape in Australia as well, because it was a rock-dominated market. And Don't Call Me Baby, ironically, was not nominated as Best Dance Single at the ARIAs, because you couldn't be nominated in the dance category if you're also nominated in the pop category. Wow. So it didn't win Dance Record of the Year, but it did win Record of the Year, which was an amazing feat, So it's kind of like, it's kind of ironic. We're in a rock-dominated market, one of the best dance music songs to ever be made out of the country, and it doesn't get even a nomination in the category that it was built out of, but it does win the Record of the Year as the best single, and it was the highest selling single as well. But the Record of the Year was that, that creative award that wasn't, about how many you sold or anything like that. It was like music industry people from Australia voting for the song. So it really kind of put dance music on the map in a massive way and changed the landscape of, then if you're a young DJ and producer, at that point, the label had been running for, 8 or 9 years. I mean, if you were coming into the scene then, your expectations of what you could do was like, the world's your oyster. I can have a record work anywhere in the world, because Madison Avenue did.
That's mental. As a business owner myself, I always think if things went like mental like that, I have a list of things that I want to do next. What changed? What changed from your garage because after that massive record, and what were you able to do that you were kind of only dreamt of being able to do?
We bought 2 garages.
No,
we didn't.
You bought the one next door.
Well, one thing we were able to do is have people like Damien sitting here actually working for us. So that was one thing we could start doing. But I mean, obviously, we started to turn what was, our own little studio and hobby and, earnest kind of future of, hey, hopefully we can put some tunes out and play some tunes, to actually looking at it, well and truly like the business that it is now. And it was, we obviously had opportunities to, Andy had a lot of opportunities to tour on the back of it. He did, several major European tours and played, Love Parade in the UK when they did it there, and, Miami Music Festival in the US, and he got to DJ with a lot of his idols at the time. So it changed the landscape for him as a touring artist. And it certainly, as I said, meant that we were, we weren't this kind of little, they do a bit of this stuff called house music. We were a collective that had the A&R ears by that time we'd won, I think, by the time we'd won 3 Dance Music ARIA awards, which is, as I said, equivalent of the Brit Awards in the dance category by that time. Madison Avenue itself won 5 ARIAs. We had an artist, and we had artists coming to us, so we had opportunities to sign a different, I guess a different level of artist. So it just opened up the world, really. Obviously 2 years before Madison Avenue, me and Andy on our first ever, it was probably more than 2 years before, but our first ever trip to London, we went to a music conference in Cairns. We couldn't get meetings with UK A&R people. The people that ran FFRR and ran all these huge English labels and European labels that we knew, we couldn't find them. They didn't want to be found by us. After Madison Avenue, we got every meeting the next year. I can guarantee you that.
I love that.
So it just changed we become, these are these guys in Australia from Vicious that are doing something we should be taking notice of, and a lot of people around the world within the dance music scene did take notice of us. They took notice of, Andy's touring stuff, his chops as a DJ, the sort of music we were putting out, not just by Madison Avenue, but other artists, Sergeant Slick, Rogue Traders, which all of that led into, kind of the electro scene grew in Australia really quickly and was one of the first territories to mash kind of that tougher electro sound that eventually evolved into EDM. So, Dirty South was a kid from the suburb of Melbourne that ended up with his own label and touring massively in Europe and the US and collaborating with the Swedish House Mafia and Axwell and, all these kind of huge artists. So, it just
Cool.
it just made us part of the global dance music scene, which we still are.
Did you two grow up together? Did you knock about as kids together? Is that how long we've been?
No, we met when we were 16. I was
Nice,
16.
okay.
Yeah, and I just I'd been to university, so I was a little bit older than John, and basically the hometown, basically where both of us grew up, was called Frankston. Basically, John was DJing in Frankston prior to me DJing anywhere, and I'd been doing basically sort of party events. This was the time, again, showing my age here, when MTV played music, not stupid reality shows, and it was all about MTV at the time, and so I actually did video parties before I did actual DJing. So I played with VHS tapes. I'm not kidding. And to DJ with VHS tapes, very, very difficult, let me tell you, because you got to fast forward and rewind to try and find the starts of the songs. And that was my start into dance music, into DJing, I should say. And then I came to Frankston and met with John, and John was DJing, and I should just quickly preface that by saying prior to that, my cousin, it was a very big DJ in Amsterdam. His name was DJ Marcelo. So I had always wanted to be a DJ and had that sort of in the back of my mind. So, and then when I met John, who was DJing in Frankston, we started to hang out, and then hence, eventually started the studio together and then the label together, which we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, man, DJing on VHS, that's impossible. That's impossible. I can't even fathom that. I lived in VHS tapes, and I can't even fathom how that is even possible. Like,
it was very, very difficult. I only did it like twice, and I was like, never again, because I had these VHS tapes and I had everything written down that I had to fast forward and rewind to get to. Of course, you can't mix. But it was basically parties, basically with big video screens, and now obviously you can do it with, I think it's called the Pioneer DJ MVR or whatever it is, and
VEJ.
VEJ, yeah, and you can mix and speed it up and slow it down. Obviously, I wasn't able to mix, but being able to play videos at a party was like super, super cool. And this was at university where I was, and I've actually never ever told anyone this story, and it was really cool because obviously when you hit play, it's not just music; it's a massive video screen, and we had all TVs around the room. So it was really cool because you could just hit play and the whole room was then enveloped in videos. And at that time, videos were amazing at the time, like phenomenally great, Duran and those sort of artists. They had amazing videos with massive budgets, and obviously the early days of the Jacksons and Michael Jackson and things like that. So it was a fantastic time to be a video DJ, although not with VHS tapes, let me tell you.
That'd be so hard. My God. I'm always a fan of mistakes and what you learn from it. Is there any that you've had that have been really big and you've thought, shit, I've made a mistake there, but then you've learned from it and it's just made you a better person?
Wow, where do you want us to start?
We did a compilation CD, and one of the CDs was super successful because we happened to have a song that was super hard to get, and we put it on that compilation CD, and it happened to come out at Christmas, and everyone wanted that CD, and it was really successful. So then the next CD, I had this brainwave of an idea to make it a scratch and smell type CD. So I thought, this is going to be cool. I'll make it smell like oranges. No one's ever done this before. So we looked up how to get an orange scent, and we manually scented like 1,000 CD booklets. And then we woke up the next morning and all the CD booklets were all stuck together and we couldn't use any of them. So we had to print all the booklets again and nothing worked. Like the complete orange smell idea was a total and utter waste of time.
I think you learn, as an independent label, part of the learning process is just, making mistakes. And we had test pressings come back that, we probably shouldn't have approved. And then we pressed up the first 200 and realised there was, maybe a distorted bit somewhere. So we had to redo the test pressings. I remember we did an early CD single and we got our statement for the first, I think, 1,000 CD singles, and we worked out we'd lost 3 cents for every one because we had never done it before, and we paid too much for artwork, we paid too much for the sleeves, we paid too much for everything, and all the bills come in separately. The income didn't come in for 2 years, a year later with the accounting systems, and we added it all up and we're like, we've actually lost about 3 cents for every unit we sold. It was like, what? But, I mean,
amazing.
You learn about contracts, like I remember we signed a record, an Australian artist, to a really big English dance music label. I won't say the details, but we were absolutely stoked with the deal. We were like, wow, these guys, this is a massive label, and we got a really good advance. The advance was, I think, about £20,000 for the deal at the time, which was quite good for a record of the time, and they had options in their deal. And then between them signing it and paying us the advance, the A&R person changed, the boss of the company changed, and they just never put the record out. And we were like, why would you pay £20,000 and never release the song? But they were like, we don't think it's going to work now, different people involved. And suddenly we learned, we need to have in our contracts that if you don't put our music out after a certain period of time, we get the rights back. Because we'd never considered that somebody would spend that much money on a project and then not put it out. But we learnt the hard way that that's what can happen. So, that's just one example, but I think there'd be hundreds of examples where we've learnt little things along the way. The one thing I would say is we've always been an artist-first company because we've always made music, we've been DJs. So from that point of view, I don't think we've ever looked back and thought, gee, we really stitched up an artist or if there was a mistake made in a release or something, it was an honest mistake. It was never us trying to get something over them or trying to rip off an artist or trying to get, a really unfair royalty deal or do kind of things. We own your music forever and we're never ever gonna, consider remixing it ever again, or we're never gonna do this or do that. We've always been artist friendly and being like, we're in this together. So we we've been a label that has a shared royalty system, and Vicious actually cannot make a profit unless the artist also makes a profit. It's not possible under our deals. And the reason we do that is because the transparency that supplies gives everybody confidence that, hey, we're all in this together. And I think that's probably the most important mentality that stayed with the label from start to finish. So you can make mistakes, but you can't take advantage of artists and expect it not to come back and bite you in the ass. So that's the good thing.
So when you're signing records, what factors do you have to look at that make it a record possible, that it kind of makes it a business for obviously for you and the artist?
I would say, and I'll give people an insight into the Avicii situation. So I was touring as an artist called Vandalism back at that time. I can't actually remember the year, but it was essentially the start of Avicii's career. And we did a gig in Stockholm, and the manager, Ash, said, I've got this artist, Avicii, his name's Tim. You want to come back to his place and check out his tracks? And this story will answer your question, but also highlight to anyone how to become something that you possibly thought you could never be, or possibly think you can be. So basically I went back to his house. He was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. He had headphones and a computer, and that was it. And he was making music and played me demos. And at the time, EDM was a lot more bass driven, and it was very much about kick and bass lines, and
almost
I wouldn't call it aggressive.
House, really.
Yeah, it was proggy. Artists like T. Schwartz was big. Dirty South was big. It was very, very bass line and synth driven. And he played me a bunch of demos with pianos in it, and they were all, and I'm sure everyone would now go, well, of course, pianos, it's Avicii. But at that time, no one was making music with the pianos. It was not being done anywhere. And I listened to it, and there was melodic hits there. And so to answer, this is a long-winded answer, but it's exactly what we do. One, as DJs, and two, as a label, is you listen to something, and within the first, 10, 20 seconds, you say, I'm going to buy this as a DJ, or as an A&R person, there's something here, there's a hook here. And I could hear immediately in his demos, and he gave me a bunch of demos, I still have them now, there were melodic hooks that were fantastic. There were not really any vocals there yet, but basically he was writing piano hits. And that was not one, there was no one doing piano music at that time, so that immediately
in that
indicated
style,
to me this is something.
Just to clarify, obviously house music and Italo House had done pianos, but that proggy kind of start of EDM wasn't really where pianos lived at that stage.
Yeah, and so then basically I said, yep, let's do a deal with Avicii. And so that answers your question, because we listen for hooks, and that hook can be a vocal, a hook can be a disco sample chopped up in a certain way, like, The Bomb, is basically a sample, just chopped up. These sounds falling into my mind is a sample. And so as a label, we listen to something and go, what's the hook of this song? And that's what we look for. That's what we look for in a song. But then we also then look beyond that song and go, is this person making a one-off song that's like, The Bomb, these sounds falling into my mind, it's a one-off song? Or is it an artist, which is what Avicii was? And I could tell he was an artist because he was making, 3-4 songs in a go, every time in a set, if you will. And Ash's manager would just send me 4 demos, and each time 4 demos. So you look for hooks in songs, or you look for talent in an artist that can be an artist and who's someone that's writing lots of music. So that would be the 2 answers that I would suggest. And that's still true now, and that would be true in 10 years' time. It's the same thing. Hooks are hooks, and a great hook is always a great hook. It's going to work.
Yeah. From a business perspective, I would suggest that we sign music that we like, and the business side of it comes down to how we market and promote it, because, there's a reality to the financial side of running a label, and we could have an amazing underground record that we love. It's not going to get the same sorts of tools as a pop record is going to get. So from a business perspective of running the label, you know, we are kind of treating different sorts of music in different ways because they have different areas where they work. I mean, you know, you can't take an underground techno record to a pop radio station, and you can't take a pop radio song to Solomon to play in Ibiza, you know, or to Sven Vath. Like, it's just, while we'll always love to hear records with hooks, an underground record's hook could be something that's completely different to a crossover pop dance record's hook. And the business and the thinking behind that, you know, Damien assists us with, and that we already have intrinsically in what we've done as DJs. When we used to put the record on a record in the record shop, we made a decision, firstly, of whether we liked it, so whether we're going to buy it. And the second thing we were deciding, because Australia was such a melting pot of music, we were thinking, this is a bit of an underground record. I could play this on a Saturday night at Chase's. This one's a little bit more vocal house. I could play this on a Tuesday at my uni kind of gig, or Andy could play it on a Thursday at his uni gig. So we were always making decisions as DJs of where music sat, and those same decisions happen as a label. But the business side of it is, how do you market it and promote it, and have your staff apply their knowledge and their skills so that, you know, records get promoted in the right way. And as I said, you know, an underground record gets promoted like an underground record, and a record that starts to cross over, you start to make different tools and you make different business decisions around it. We still love both songs. And as a creative, you know, music lover, one to me isn't necessarily better than the other, but, you know, the way they get brought to market and promoted is completely different.
I guess the next thing is, Damien, where do you fit in that process? Do you look at numbers? Do you look at marketing numbers, or is it kind of, do you get the record later? Let's bring you in. You've been quiet. Let's bring you in.
Well, I guess
the
market, that side of that side's coming into play a lot more, I think, with, you know, the prevalence of social media, and also what power the artists themselves, if you kind of take the music aside, what world they kind of bring in, what audience they bring in. Is there any unique aspects to that artist? We've recently signed, like, for example, a drag queen duo who are DJs, you know, and there's no one doing that in Australia at all, and they also have a really strong social presence. TikTok's been a really fantastic A&R platform recently, where artists and DJs are building an audience on there and creating fantastic, you know, fan bases. So from a label's perspective as well, when you're signing records, you know, you're looking at also what their artist brings in terms of marketing potential within their own kind of world and spectrum, but also as a label, what can we do to play with that artist in terms of ideas and marketing strategies? You know, what can they offer and bring to the table that we can kind of plug into? So that also kind of plays a big part in when signing records and kind of, you know, the changing landscape. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, that kind of is one piece of the puzzle, but the music's got to be good at the end of the day, a good record.
Are you finding TikTok more of a platform than Instagram?
Yeah, I think so. 100%. Like, we just started recently with Andy Van with his new project, Super Disco Club, and we built them up within a few months to 14,000 followers on there. And we're finding fantastic follow through into pushing off platform. So, you know, we started off, for example, just putting as the bio description, follow our disco house playlist on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just organically we got up to like 600 followers. And then 2 weeks ago we started, let's start making TikToks of what we're updating the playlist with. And, you know, once a week we'll do a TikTok that is about, we updated our playlist. And since then we've now grown to, in 2 weeks, to 1,200 followers for our Spotify playlist. And, you know, fantastic engagement, over 1 million views within, you know, 3 months, and hundreds of thousands of likes and millions of comments, and also people connecting and recognizing Andy from Madison Avenue days, or, you know, old house fans. And so it's not also just a younger demographic, you know, someone of Andy's age group as well is also connecting, and also connecting to people of his age group. So for a brand new artist, you know, when Instagram can kind of be a bit more of a slow platform and the organics of the algorithm isn't there anymore, TikTok is where, you know, you can really get that virality. And, you know, kind of, you know, I think the third video Andy posted, you know, we kind of, we did a video where Andy spoke about Madison Avenue, and then it kind of clicked from there and kept growing. So I think TikTok is definitely, you know, something that, you know, artists should be looking into and what their strategy is, because especially if you might be struggling to connect or build an audience or find an audience. Literally, you know, Andy and I are finding, we love TikTok now, and we find artists who literally have started 2 weeks ago and they have 1 million followers already, DJs, and they're just posting like, here's our summer, 5 top summer tunes, our 5 top, like, you know, chill out songs, and like kind of vague topics, and performing super well on that platform. So
TikTok is amazing because they don't shut you down. It's the exact opposite of Facebook. You put stuff up and their algorithms work out and pay the labels, and they don't stop you from doing that, which is the exact opposite of what Facebook does. You know, John and I have done live streams to thousands of people, and Facebook would chop the live stream off, and we'd have to try and get back on. And Facebook would do it 5 times in a live stream. We've done, you know, 100 videos or something on TikTok, and TikTok's never stopped anything, not once, because TikTok is embracing music and embracing the fact that it needs to be paid, which is totally appropriate. Labels do need to be paid, but TikTok is saying, let us work out that financial back end. You guys do the creative stuff, make your creative videos, do your things, do your mashups, do all of that, do all of it, and we'll work it out on our back end. And I'm like, my God, Facebook should have done this 8 years ago.
TikTok's a new platform, so they got those deals when they launched with all the labels before they kind of went ahead with things with Facebook and Instagram. They kind of started and were doing their things before those label deals in place, which they, you know,
possibly, yeah.
got. But, you know, those major labels, or, you know, the Warners and stuff, they kind of block everything on the platform as an automatic block, not monetized. So it makes things difficult for artists trying to, you know, push music.
Yeah.
I guess you're putting your own music as well, though, from a label point of view, the stuff that you own the rights to, and for a label, I guess
not always. No, I mean, I think the difference is when you come to streaming multiple hours of music on an online platform, it generally gets shut down. I mean, people aren't doing that on TikTok. You know, they're not putting up a 3-hour TikTok with 45 songs. They're putting up, what, a 2-minute one, Andy? I mean, how long is the average one you put up?
Oh, but there are live streams, but there are not a lot of DJ live streams. But no, the majority, I would say, of TikTok's platforms are short 1 minute to 3 minute videos max. Do you know what I mean? And that's the mentality behind the platform, which is fine.
Yeah. And I mean, the ironic thing is that the user at the end of the day doesn't care about all this copyright stuff. But, you know, there is, as a person who is involved in a label, you know, there is a reason why. I mean, imagine if you let everybody just stream music for free on Facebook, you're going to end up with a 24/7 music channel on Facebook that doesn't pay any royalties. And then you're going to end up with a second one, and then you're going to end up with 1 million of them, and Spotify is going to be over. And the music industry is going to be finished as a financially viable product. So I do understand why there needs to be, you know, ways to make it work. What I do not understand in any way, shape or form is how companies as big as YouTube and Instagram and Facebook haven't worked out how to monetize the dance music world in some way when they're so powerful, and they could have a conversation with every basic music copyright owner in the world very easily and come up with something. I don't understand why they haven't, but I understand why there needs to be some monetization feature. But at the end of the day, punters don't care. You just want to hear music. If you're watching a DJ on Facebook, you want to hear every song. You don't want every second song to stop. You know?
I know, it's annoying.
Yeah. And just quickly, just reading the comments, someone's had this, you know, TikTok's muted. You just got to be careful as well. Like, your account is set as a creator account, not a business account. Business accounts do get some of their sounds muted sometimes on TikTok. Also, as an artist, if there's DJs watching, if you're licensing your music to different labels globally, TikTok isn't all quite there yet. So let's say, for example, we do a US license, that song now might appear on Ultra Music, for example. If someone in the US makes a TikTok using the Ultra Music version, that version can only be heard within the US, and the rest of the world won't be able to hear the rest of it because it's not licensed with the Australian or whoever that version will be heard. To get around that, there is ways with ingestion, but you've got to make sure all the global partners are ingesting. Like, then you've got to make a global version just for TikTok available. So there's been some issues there in the past with licensing deals with TikTok and territories.
I was going to ask you, Damien, your tips for artists for using TikTok, because I've used it a bit, but it feels like I need to be back in there massively.
Mm-hmm. You've got to find your own little groove. And you kind of find that via regular posting. There's some best practices as well, like making sure, you're kind of clearly in frame, making sure if you add captions on the video that they aren't then covered over by the caption you might put as like the caption for the video, if that makes sense. Small little things like that can make a big difference. Andy, recently we did one where we accidentally put the video caption covered up by the caption, and it was a part 2 of a video where part 1 got 100,000 views and the part 2 actually only got like 5,000 views, and part of that could have been just because we actually covered up what the video title was by our caption. Small things, small best practices like that. But what we find with Super Disco Club, for example, is they found their groove early on. We had a video go viral where Andy kind of literally, we copied this format where Andy will turn around, grab a vinyl, talk about it. This is a vinyl from, the 90s, house record, really big hit. Press play, plays it. That's the format. That format, when he does that video, they always perform super, super well. However, if we do a video that's something a little bit different outside of that, it doesn't perform as well. Not to say that you shouldn't do all other videos, but you notice with TikTok and TikTokers, they kind of follow a similar format that works for their audience, and that changes for each person. So you've got to do trial and error, I think. But for DJs, a simple one that works really, really well on the platform is literally numbered lists of top 5 disco hits of the 90s, and you kind of play them and you can do your own mix and you list the numbers on the screen. Those ones go crazy on platforms. People love those videos. That format works extremely, extremely well. And if you can find a niche that works for you within that, then fantastic. You've got to try to do a long play and long lead as well. You can't just jump on TikTok and you've got a single coming out in 2 weeks and you want to push a single. You've got to kind of create an organic thing that 80% of your content is actually just content that's, organic and not pushing any agenda. And then, when you do have a single coming out, you can push that on the platform, but also be wary that when you are pushing those videos, they're probably actually not going to perform very well. TikTok isn't really a platform like Instagram is where you kind of promote and sell things to your audience. It's more about engaging and creating content that is, for the platform itself. However, you can use what we're doing with Super Disco Club is, incentivizing those fans via smart links. Linktree is really fantastic, I think, if you have a smart link of getting those people off platform and listening to you on Spotify or following your Spotify page and playlists and stuff as such.
I was just going to say one thing further to what Damien said. If any DJ or producers watching this, just think of TikTok as almost like a chat room where you're telling an interesting story, and that interesting story can be check out this great song I used to play as a DJ, or check out this new track that I play, or check out these 2 new tracks. This is from a DJ perspective or a music perspective. Check out these 2 tracks. These work really well on the dance floor, because that's interesting for someone to hear, as opposed to check out my new song. It's called Fred. And people are going to go, yeah, who cares? But if you say, check out these 2 tracks, or how good was this Bob Sinclair record from 1999, people are going to go, yeah, I love that record. So it's kind of like TikTok needs to be a friendly, fun environment where people can relate. And relating, I think, is the best word you could possibly describe TikTok. And it's not what it used to be. People used to think it was just a platform for people doing silly dances or things like that. Yes, that is on there. And yes, there's, girls just dancing, saying, I look great. That's such a small part of it. And for example, if you like Ricky Gervais, you might go on there and you start watching Ricky Gervais videos, and then the algorithms go, oh, this guy likes comedy. I'll show you lots of Ricky Gervais videos. So it tailors itself to what you like. So, for example, what we've been doing, like Damien said, we've been doing basically disco house stuff. Anything to do with disco house from the last 25 years, we're talking about it, whether it be Sylvester or a Michael Jackson record, or whether it's Bob Sinclair, or whether it's Purple Disco Machine, or whether it's Sergeant Slick. So we talk about all of that in an all-encompassing area.
Yeah.
So if you like disco house, you're going to want to go to Super Disco Club. So that's our niche, and we've been really lucky. If you type the word disco house, just straight disco house in the search in TikTok, in the world, you'll find us. And our videos, it lists about 20 videos, and I think about 10 of them are ours. So, and that's completely nothing to do with DJing, nothing to do with Vicious in regards to the history or anything. It's just that we've found a niche, and pretty well anyone can do this. And Damien mentioned this earlier. There's a guy, literally, he just started a month ago. I'm really envious of him. And he just DJs with 2 CDJs, and he's getting millions of views. I don't know how he got through the algorithms, but basically people love his videos, and it's very EDM based. But he is doing
some tips as well to like film your videos if you are looking for some other ones. Film your videos on your phone and record your set via your Ableton or whatever, and then edit it on iMovie and put it together professionally with good sound, and then upload it. So you've got that sound quality there as well. But you can also, as a DJ is watching, you're probably really good at mixes and mashups. So you might want to start by mashing up popular songs and building your audience that way. And then when you've got a single out, you maybe can mash up your own single with a popular song that's trending on TikTok. Or when you got your single out, you can throw your single in the top 5 countdown you might do. So integrating ways to promote your song within, what works on the TikTok algorithm. I think you've got to kind of start being a user of TikTok as well and understand the little nuances of it. You can't just jump in and do, I'm going to do TikTok today. I'd recommend you probably spend a month as a user using it. But as Andy was mentioning as before, TikTok algorithm's super smart. So we've found our niche, and it's what TikTok knows. It's kind of boxed, Super Disco Club within that niche as well. So if there's an audience here that's all like disco house music or classics, they're gonna, TikTok's like, well, Super Disco Club's profile fits all those things, so they're gonna feed all of Super Disco Club's music to those people. So
just to jump in for a second,
classic music.
Damien, I mean, I think the interesting thing about that whole conversation and about all social media is the word social. I mean, it's as soon as you start treating anything like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or anything else out there as a purely advertising platform, and you're not engaged, you've got it wrong. I mean, you have to engage, and as much as, people talk about the internet and it's everywhere and you're always being watched and all this, authenticity, part of the reason that Andy Van and Super Disco's TikTok resonates is because it's authentic. Andy did play those records. He does know about the genre. They do love it. They do talk about what they love. It's not like, gee, we've got a music project. We better make sure we do something like this. Like, there's history and connection and authenticity around it. And I think, if you're an artist and you've got a Facebook page, you should be talking about not just your own music. You should be talking about other gigs that you go to and things that you're doing that are part of the scene. And that goes for a Facebook page, that goes for an Instagram, that goes for anything. You have to take away that advertising mentality and apply, hey, we're part of this. Let's just talk about what we do, the artists we love, and the best social media pages, whether it's a Facebook page or a TikTok or whatever, they're genuine. The best YouTube channels, if it's a car channel, they genuinely love cars, and I think you've got to eat, sleep and breathe it. Like Damien said, if you're going to do it, you can't kind of fake it because you think it's a good idea. You've got to be invested and you've got to treat it almost like you're part of a community, and you're talking to friends about music or about whatever it is that the channel all the stream is about.
God, I agree with you. Like, essentially, the DJs are selectors. You're just being a selector on those platforms and showing them people records that you're into, and it's that sounds exactly what Andy's doing, which is incredible. And it's amazing.
And during lockdown, John, connected to that community as well when he was doing live streams every week. And John has that reputation in Melbourne he's built over the years. And Melbourne was in lockdown for 6 months. Like, you couldn't leave your house. There was a curfew at 8 p.m. And every Saturday night he would have, I think we'd had viewers of 22,000 a week across Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. And his socials grew, from 12,000 Facebook followers to 35,000 Facebook followers, and we could then build that community long-term thing. And we put John's first record out, and it got to #1 on the iTunes dance charts and to #2 on the iTunes charts and the viral charts on Spotify, because we could then engage that community. But it was that natural growth of, not starting it to kind of push a record or anything, but actually, give back to the community and really, create that engagement naturally and organically.
Just a couple of other things on TikTok, just from a TikTok point of view, Damien. What are you doing hashtag-wise? Because I know that they're obviously a big thing. You mentioned them before; they're a big thing. Have you got any advice for that? In that end.
Yes, first one, you don't need to do hashtag FYP or hashtag For You page anymore. Right. TikTok have progressed past that, and you don't need to do that anymore. It's automatically kind of done. To kind of hashtag niche, like your genre that you're going for, but also moderately popular hashtags are fantastic ways, such as hashtag, Super Disco Club do really well, and hashtag Disco House, for example. It's a popular hashtag, but it's not overwhelmed. So they can have the #1, #4, #5, 6, 7, 8 video on that hashtag. So people who are searching it, they are coming up, whether if you hashtag a lot of the really, really popular ones, within 0.5 of a second, your video is already 100 videos in the feed of, videos getting posted on that hashtag. So I think with your hashtags, look at a mixture of what's trending. If you go on TikTok, there's a Discover page, and there's always, last month there was a mashup challenge that was trending on TikTok as the biggest trend. So, really tried to engage the DJ producer community. There's always, a music focused hashtag that's trending at that time. So use that hashtag if it's relevant to you, but then also try and look at hashtags that are kind of in that moderate to lower playing field as well, and see if you can get your videos to be like the #1 video within that field, because that's when you'll start to also see some connections happening. Also, your hashtags kind of it's kind of like doing your tags on your YouTube video and stuff. It kind of tells TikTok what your videos are. So you want to make sure that you are hashtagging things that are actually authentic to what the video is. You're not hashtagging Taylor Swift when you're posting a DJ video because Taylor Swift's trending, for example. You got to be careful that you don't. And also you got to be deliberate if you are starting TikTok, that you kind of want to be placing yourself or where you want to see your career go there, or what your career is. If you're a house music DJ, potentially don't do like techno, tracks on your TikTok to begin with, because TikTok might put you in the algorithm as a techno DJ, and then when you're trying to hit your house audience, you're actually not hitting the right audience. So in the beginning, try to be really clear with your hashtags and the videos you're making, so TikTok's algorithm can kind of place you as a user profile as well.
Those early TikToks, you've got to really then be specific, I guess, so that you're
really foundational. And I think I've seen a lot of artists who are even, quite successful artists in the world, and they're kind of just starting their TikTok. They've got, big Instagram followings and whatnot. They're struggling on TikTok. Their first couple of videos didn't actually, they didn't get the traction. And if you don't get that traction early on, it can kind of be a bit of that slog. Once you do get a viral video, keep posting regularly from that, and even respond to comments and do comment responses off it. If you get that viral video, you really got to jump on that opportunity and make the most of it to kind of keep that, that graph going and building your audience off that, because TikTok is a big roller coaster of your views. You'll go up one video and the next one will go like halfway, then up again. You'll get 2 videos that fail, and with me as a TikTok, that's how, they say it kind of works as well. Every video is not going to be a success. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. So don't be down on yourself if you have a really successful video and the next one fails. The video 3 videos later is probably going to be successful as well again.
So
yes, doing those things, and also mashups. There's a lot of if you're a producer, put your acapellas up there and say, hey, duet my video and sing on over the top of it, do a top line. And you can start engaging, singers on the platform and all that. So look at ways of building community.
And you mentioned about playlist growth from a Spotify point. You're finding that kind of like movement of people from TikTok to Spotify a natural movement, and people are growing. You saying you're growing your playlist that way.
Yes.
Are you also discovering playlists on there quite easily?
We're finding the growth of playlists really easy. I think still converting it to getting people to stream is a bit harder to see because it's harder to you can see your follower count grow up on your playlist, but it's hard to sometimes track what streams have come from TikTok, for example. Discovering other people's playlists, potentially. If you want to use, I think users are on there to kind of find, artists run playlists and find playlists that are genre specific. And that's why we're seeing a fantastic connection with our playlist. Also, I recommend as well, start your own YouTube channel playlist as well. Not everyone just uses Spotify. So when your smart link, set it up on your playlist up on YouTube as well. There's a comment that's mentioned as well, can see that people get verified pretty early on, and it seems to help build the audience. Is there a way to get your account verified? Yes, there is. There is a form you fill out for TikTok. So it's about talking with your distributor. They can help you with getting that form across to you, and they can put a submission in to get verified on TikTok. You've got to have some big media pieces published about you, and they would recommend you don't get verified on TikTok until you have at least 10 to 20,000 followers, because what will happen is everyone will comment on your videos. Why are you verified? How are you verified? And that's the same goes for Instagram as well. You talk to your distributor or your label. They should have Facebook media partner access that they can put an application in overnight and get you verified. You just have to submit 5 articles of publications that are quite reputable. So verification on these platforms actually isn't difficult. Some people just don't, know the method behind the madness. Chat directly to your label, your distributor, and they should be able to get you verified on those platforms. And TikTok's fantastic because once you get verified, you can then apply to be an artist account. And then so when you get made to be an artist account, all your streaming catalog appears as a tab on your profile, as, the little clips you can put to your TikTok sounds.
That's sick. That's really cool.
But if you've got 40,000 followers, you definitely probably got enough following to get verified on TikTok. You just need to have good media publications, or you might need chart success, whether it's on the Music Week charts, something like that. And it also kind of needs to be a bit relevant. Needs to be recent within the latest 6 months or so. So if you don't have that, it might be worthwhile investing in a publicist for your next campaign to kind of get you some of those few key pieces. But that's what they ask for. They pretty much ask for, they want to know that you're a public figure out there in the public eye of media, so that, publications help.
I know that Chatter, and I know that his artists are definitely in that realm, so he'll be cool. And then so let's bring it right forward. So how has the last 18 months been? You said you've been in lockdown for 6 months. John, you've been streaming for solidly, it sounds like. That sounds fun.
Yeah, I did 42 Saturday nights in a row from my house.
Woohoo!
And, the first one was really just, hey, I had a really massive gig that I play every year called Reminisce, and it's usually about 7,000 people go to it at a place called the Sydney My Music Bowl, a big outdoor space in central Melbourne. And the Victorian lockdown started 5 days before that. As cases were getting out of control, they closed all those sorts of events. And I was like, I'm just going to play a set from home, because there's all these people that were looking forward to this party. It had sold out. We sold, I think there was 8,000 tickets sold or something.
Oh, shit.
I'm just going to play a set from home. And I think it peaked at about 4,500 webcams at any one time tuned into the show. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I just wanted to play some tunes. And so I just kept doing it. Great interaction, I ended up getting actually a sponsor as well. So, people supported the show and got on board. But it was a very down to earth kind of, you know, fun Saturday night music experience. It was never too serious. The audio quality was always great, but you know, I didn't go to town with, you know, a whole bunch of, you know, crazy effects or graphics or a video wall behind me or anything like that. I just did it from the music room at my house. You know, had an entire vinyl collection of, you know, 25 years right behind me. I could just look through and pull out a song and go, wow, I haven't heard this for 20 years. Might play that.
That's sick.
And then, you know, as a label, our music strategy was kind of like, okay, people are still going to want to hear music. If you've got an audience of some sort, you've got people engaged, they don't disappear because they stop going out. So we're kind of like, if you've got an audience and you've got people that follow you, or if you're going to be able to expose your music in a way that relates to radio, we still wanted to put music out. Obviously, if you're a brand new artist and you're a club DJ and you're making underground techno records, it's not an ideal time to be releasing music. The mentality of the label was, yeah, we still want to put music out. Even though global dance floors were basically all across Europe, the US and Australia were all closed, we just we did rethink some artists because, as I said, if you're a brand new kind of artist, you've never had a record out before, it's probably not an ideal time to introduce yourself to the market because you've got to have some way to get yourself across. But, you know, like I had quite good success with a track that I put out last year, and we really targeted my online audience because they were listening to me anyway and they liked the music that I played. So I was quite happy to put that release out right in the middle of a lockdown and the pandemic because I knew there was people who were going to like it and go and look at it and stream it and listen to it. So, yeah, I think the strategy of releasing music changed a little bit. There's more to releasing music than just kind of putting it out. There's artists behind it that we've had with us for years, and if their creative process is still going and they still want to release stuff, we didn't want to say to them, no, we can't do it because we're in a pandemic. You know, there's a mental health and a support your artist aspect to what we do as a label as well. And I think that's something that really the streaming and the connection that come through that to me and people out there in the dance music community, it really showed how important music is to so many people. And I think we said to our artists, look, just literally Andy had either a telephone conversation or an email chain with all of the artists that he deals with and me with the artists that I deal with, literally saying, what do you want to do? Because, you know, if you don't want to put a record out because you think you'd rather put it out when clubs are open and you want to be able to play it as a DJ and see it work on dance floors, sure, let's do that. So I think it's an interesting time, but us as a label, we kept things kind of rolling.
Did you change the release pattern anymore, or did you change anything that way, or is it just continuous?
Definitely just applied like some thinking to, okay, if we're going to put this record out, how are we going to expose it when nightclub dance floors are shut? So, as I said, if it was me, we were like, right, what are you doing? Where can we, you know, market this record to, and who's the person that's going to listen to it and support you and buy it? If it was, you know, a hip hop track, it might have on Be Rich, it might have had more of a playlisting focus or more of a kind of radio focus. So yeah, we definitely thought about it, and some things worked differently than they would have a year before in what we did around it. But fundamentally, it's still about, as I said, the artist wanting to put music out and having an audience to engage to. I don't think it was a great time to launch as a brand new artist during a time when, you know, you've got limited opportunities to build your music, especially if it's very club focused and there's no clubs open. Like, how do you even start something off? So, but there's still dance music shows. There's still Spotify dance music playlists. There's still the dance music fan, just because they can't go out to a club doesn't mean they don't want to hear. If you're hungry for new music, you potentially still want to hear new music, whether you're stuck at home or whether you're in a club 5 nights a week. So I don't think the appetite changes that much. And in fact, the appetite for streaming did go up slightly, although interestingly, it was nostalgic playlists that peaked first. So even across the US, you know, classic country music, classic 80s music, classic dance music all had spikes in their playlists. And I think, you know, there was a lot of talk around, you know, when people are in troubled times and they're not sure what's happening, they want to go back to things they know. So I think that meant that they went back to, you know, that's been proved to be a statistically true thing, that people went back to things they know. They went to music that they love. They went to eras of music that they love, and apparently they went to toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. Saying that, did you have a spike in "Don't Call Me Baby" then? Did you?
We did. We saw a lot of our back catalogue over COVID.
Avicci back catalogue.
We saw our streaming catalogue actually increase by 200% over COVID.
No way.
The Avicci back catalogue, we were number one on like dance party playlist on, you know, the US version, and a lot of the back catalogue with Avicci got highlighted. Madison Avenue gets re-highlighted a lot. I think there's a lot to be said as well about, you know, we repackaged Madison Avenue's "Don't Call Me Baby" for the 20th anniversary as well, and that restarted a lot of stories that we were having with the labels around that song. So, you know, when they are playlisting Throwback Thursday, for example, you know, recently Madison Avenue with a playlist cover for that, it kind of rejigs their memory as well of the old hit you might have had, as well as, you know, the recent release. You know, 2 weeks ago, we just released "Don't Look Back" by Tommy Sunshine and Disco Fries with a Gerd Jansen and Sergeant Slick remix, and that was released originally back in 2011 or 2012. And that kind of revisited that conversation about, you know, as well, selling that story to the DSPs of what, you know, history we have done, because, you know, these playlist editors, you know, they've been in the role for 2 or 3 years. They're sometimes not aware of the history some of these labels have and the legacy they hold. So it's good to help revisit those things. And I think as well, something as well we look to as with starting with a new artist is trying to create some form of story or talking point to bring to the marketing table and those conversations with Spotify. So for example, with John, we focused heavily on partnerships and also validating the brand and the legacy he has built as a DJ over the years in Melbourne. So we looked at engaging that live stream audience our goal was to get to number 1 on iTunes, which we got to, because we could then sell that via doing a pre-sale campaign. We then sold that straight away to Spotify, said that we're number 1 on iTunes, and, you know, that was on Friday. Come Monday, we got added to the Monster Dance Hits playlist, which, you know, gets, you know, a lot of streams. Then it got into the viral charts. We got into the viral charts because we looked at partnerships with Red Bull and Pioneer, and we ran competitions with them to activate people adding it to their own playlists, saving it, buying it on iTunes. So we kind of really focused on trying to take what John's brand is built over the years and really amplify it with partnerships and branding. And we also invited and sent, you know, hampers out to all the key media people and DSPs, and gave them Uber Eats vouchers and wine to watch John's live stream on the weekend. So it kind of, and we could, by doing that, we could tell the story that John gets, you know, there's 20,000 people watching him every weekend during lockdown, and he's done it for 48 weeks or, you know, 42 weeks or however long it was. So like, it shows that he's an active member and participating in the music community, and, you know, DSPs and stuff really want to see that you are like you know, involved within the music community itself, an artist. You're not just sometimes a bedroom producer, which isn't always the worst thing, but they do like to see that you are connected with other artists and whatnot, and you are giving back to the community, and you do have some form of market share.
That's super interesting. So you ran pre-save campaign for iTunes.
Yeah, pre-sale. Because also we figured out, well, you don't need many sales these days to chart on iTunes, but it's a great, and we knew that we could use John's audience because of the numbers he's get that, if we ran this campaign and we ran it with Red Bull, that if you pre-saved it, Red Bull were going to send you out a 6-pack anyway of Red Bull. So you're kind of making your money back anyway via that. And we got, hundreds of sales, and it resulted us in debuting at number 2 on the overall iTunes charts and number 1 on the dance charts. So it was a way of giving that quick validation of like, hey, John's been a DJ for many, many, many years and really, well respected within the DJ community, but now as an artist, when he's releasing music, it is charting. There is a fan base, there is a community there for him, and it's, something to take notice of.
I mean, it's also like touring stuff, like one of the things that Damien's done with artists that he's looked after before, and that, in a way I did in the last couple of years is, if you're a DJ, there's hundreds, thousands of DJs around you, and how do you get yourself booked over somebody else? And that's, there's a few ways you can do it. You can obviously, put out an amazing record and suddenly everybody wants to book whoever it is that's done that record. You can network with your community, or you can build your own, you can go and do a show. If you're a new act, you can do a show that in a venue that holds 100 people, and you can try and sell 100 tickets. And when you've sold 100 tickets, you can do a show 3 months later for 200 people and try and sell 200 tickets. And then when you're going to a promoter and you're saying, hey, I'd love to play your club, or we'd love to be on your festival bill. We sold out 2 shows at X venue or Y venue. How many tickets? Oh, it was 200 tickets, but I was the only act on. Those sort of things actually resonate with promoters and people. New Year's Eve, I ran a party. I was the only DJ on, and I sold it out, 580 tickets. Now, 580 tickets doesn't change the world, but if you're running a club and you're looking for people that actually really have a genuine fan base, that proves that people are willing to come and listen to you play, whether you be a live act, whether you be a DJ, whether you be a band. It applies to, even if you're a comedian, it all applies. So the same way that, you look at your engagement on social media and your engagement with fans across multiple platforms, you can do the same thing to drive live shows and ticket sales and build touring opportunities and gig opportunities. But I think the important thing about all of this is that, the odd thing you can fluke, but when we did that campaign that Damien was talking about before, we had multiple conversations about how I was going to put a record out in the middle of a pandemic, and what were the strengths of me as a DJ, as an artist, and what were the pitfalls, and how do we make the most of the strengths to try and build something that's getting better and better for the future. And I think we're having the same conversations with Andy and Cass about Super Disco Club. How do we use the assets that Andy and Cass bring to the table? And that could be anything from, what does their live show look like? What does, Andy can go and DJ by himself, or he can do a show with Cass. They've got this TikTok thing going on, which is resonating with people. As a label, and as if you're an artist manager, or even if before you've got a label and before you're an artist manager, you've got to just try and look at the things that are within your control that you can build. And we did that in completely different ways on different artists, and we're doing it different with Super Disco Club than we did it with me last year, because it's got different assets and it's got different touch points that can drive people to the project in a really genuine, wow, I love what these guys do kind of way.
A quick side point as well. We're building, quite steadily Super Disco Club's Instagram as well via Instagram Reels. So Reels is also a fantastic way that works similar to TikTok to help build and grow your audience. And just a quick note there, save your TikTok and just repost it with the TikTok watermark on Instagram, because Instagram can actually pick up on that, and they'll actually start muting your account and like reducing the reach you get for your Instagram account. So you can post the same video, but make sure you post the raw file without the TikTok watermark on it, because we've had some updates from TikTok privately. From Instagram privately, that they are muting those accounts more and like making sure your posts don't get that much reach. So yeah, you don't want to be just directly resharing from TikTok onto Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I'm very aware that Andy's laptop's about to die. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I don't want him to just disappear. So we'll have to do this again. This has been so much gold. So thank you all so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Graham. It's been great.
Thank you.
Been really great.
Thank you so much for staying up late. I know it's late there for you. So
hey, we're DJs and music
DJs,
people. Late is what we do.
It's the early set midnight.
Amazing. Thank you. I really want to talk to you about Super Disco Club as well, Andy. But let's save that for another time.
Absolutely, love to. I'd love to.
When you've got more battery, when we've got another battery.
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
just jump in if anybody wants to look at what Vicious is doing as far as release wise. We've definitely got
a
some
link tree just got
playlists
put in the comments.
Oh, did you just put? Oh, there's a link tree.
Yeah, link trees in the comments just posted. Yep.
Yeah, we've been posting. We've been posting all your links all the way through the chat and all the way through this conversation in the comments for everyone to go and find you as well.
We just put out on Beatport exclusively now Vicious Cuts Open. So it's the recent collection of our recent hits from the past year. So if you would like to get that compilation, we've just released that, and it's got a few exclusives as well as singles that are available as part of the compilation.
Thank you so much.
Get in the marketing.
Get in. Thanks, guys. I'll be back I'll just say bye to the guys, and I'll be back in a second. I hope you got loads out of that video, and I hope you really enjoyed it. Again, thanks for joining me on YouTube today. Consider subscribing. The button's in the corner. Give this a little like if you've enjoyed it. It really helps the reach of the video and really helps other people find it. And I'll see you in the next video. See you later. Bye-bye.